Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, in such a warm and comfortable room. We will have, as it is evident from the program, to discuss one of the painful topics for the Russian Federation. I would like to introduce speakers in order of their presentation. We don't have much time, and I would like to ask speakers to talk no more than 5 minutes. Now, the problem of the legal mechanism of the development of the regions in our country is quite high on the agenda. When we started to use such terms as innovative development of regions, we felt that we need to figure out what we are talking about and what would be the impact on our economy and on the regions. The principle of cooperation between state and business, between various ministers and regions of our country and other countries are quite relevant because the legal mechanism rose many issues rather than answers. Legislation of the Russian Federation in this regard is being developed quite fast, but sometimes not in a systematic manner, and we need to discuss how we need to build our system so that to ensure its cost effectiveness, understandable and easy perceivable by the business and the state. Let's start discussing this issue. Our distinguished speakers, I'm going to introduce them. My colleague, moderator, also will tell briefly about the legal aspects of the topic in question. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Why we decided to generate this roundtable? The Russian legislation is the main task. The main task is to provide legal expertise of all bylaws, normative acts, and draft laws on the basis of the legislative initiative. Recently we heard from business says frequently about the over-regulation or lack of regulation of the economic activities. Why it happens, how draft laws are formed, that would be the subject of our roundtable. We understand that each region of the Russian Federation or each territories are sometimes have peculiar features in terms of their economic development. But all this should subject to the legal regulation. But despite this, the statistics which is provided by the business community state that there is no improvements of this legislation. Business says that the role of legislative authorities in establishing business favorable climate is quite poor. Business is remains concerned about the protection of property and ownership. Business is concerned about the relation of state to business activities. That is why in the framework of this discussion with our colleagues from big companies in the Russian Federation, Norilsk, we suggested several topics for discussion. They are related to the question how to ensure the legal and economic basis for the development. We also decided to discuss recent trends, how to develop the public legal regulation, whether the legislation should have the models of unitary state, like we saw it in the law on territorial of advanced development, or maybe development of the Arctic regions of Russia. With the support of the government of Emelyantsev region and Madam Khabrieva, they presented the draft law and the concept of this law. You can get the information about this on the website. A new trend, emerging trend, which we would like to discuss, is the legal qualification and applicability of the documents to the urban development and social and economic development to the other documents of the social and economic development. Another trend is how to assess the activities of the subjects of the public legal regulation. We, as an applied institute, is interested in hearing your opinion. We would like to sum up them and use them in our further work. Thank you very much. So the first speaker, I would like to give the floor to the Deputy Minister of the Economic Development, State Secretary, regarding the implementation of the regional investment project. So please fill in us with this information. I would like to avoid a little bit from the title of this round table. Our ministry in this sense is unique because all questions that were mentioned before me are the responsibility of the activities of our ministry. We are dealing with economic development, we are dealing with the regional economic development, we are responsible for the investment climate, and we deal with regions in this domain in order to implement roadmaps and introduction of the standards for the investment development. We also deal with a number of other questions important for business, licensing, self-regulation, supervisory activities, and we have our common vision with respect to the whole picture of those problems that are related with the investment climate in the country and the trends in this domain. I have economic education background and I would present rather general economic picture regarding our vision of the current situation. Current situation is a bunch of problem, even at the federal level, and it was mentioned correctly. The ministry has been saying for that for many years, so we have a redundancy of regulation. We call it a legal unconstrained regulation. We adopt several hundreds laws, some of them are not implemented, so divided by the days, in a number of days in a year, you can see what would be the situation and how can we observe the requirements contained in this law. In regions, these problems are multiplying because we have three equal trends in interaction between states and regions in normative legal regulation. First trend is triggered by the fact that we have good and bad regions, and in bad regions they are doing something bad for the business, and Federation has justified desire at the request of business to establish common basic rule of game, rule of play for applicable to entire federation, even where responsibility should be borne by regions. Colleagues, we can call it the sweeping unitarian state trend. Sometimes it plays a positive role when it would be easy for business to work in a region because they apply the same rules like in this region like in other regions. But for the other reasons, because we have bad and good regions. When good regions come to appeal to the state, saying that you cut all the initiatives to develop, to improve business environment, you deprive us of our competitive advantages, taking into account our proximity to the borders, to the markets. Please give us wider powers. So this is the second trend which exists in our legislation, regulation. We sometimes try to delegate to the regions the powers which belong to the federal authorities in the control and supervision, where we try to discuss actively in the government how, by establishing KPI and other elements, to delegate the functions of control and supervision to the regions, because they're close to Earth, so to say, and they can implement more efficiently a whole number of functions at the level of regions as compared with the federal system. This is a reverse trend in the process of federalization. And there is a third overlapping trend, says that the business climate is not so favorable as we would like to see, and that triggers the appearance of various small-scale projects like Far East, Crimea, Arctic, and so on and so forth. This is a so-called legal experiment when in a specific territory at on a specific time we introduced the regime of the legal regulation which stand apart from other regimes. We have a lot of examples. So we have regime of the territory of the advanced development, special economic zones, special designated cities inside the territories of the advanced development. We have free economic zone in the Crimea, which is different to what we had earlier. So all these three trends mentioned by me above, so they overlap with the overall chaos or disorganization in the legal regulation. In these circumstances, or in this context, it becomes quite difficult to move forward this process. What are our suggestions? First of all, we need to look quite carefully to two intertwined things: the legal unconstrainedness, and we try together with our legal institutes to put some filters on a number of laws or bylaws presented each year, because their number could have a sounding effect, and legal implementation. The bigger part of the chaos resulted from amendments can be explained by the poor legal implementation. But instead of improving this, state initiates the amendments to the existing law, where they try to compensate the gaps in the laws. But it's not working. If law is not working, even if it is amended, it won't be working as well. So legal implementation in control and supervisory activities, it plays a very important role, especially in those areas where the supervisory authorities are not capable of dealing with those tasks entrusted with them: environmental security, economic security. So all expenses are generated in specific fields: transport security, environmental security, industrial security, and protection of labor. So these expenses, which are regularly put on business, they are specifically related to specific control and supervisory measures. And the third aspect, which we have been dealing with for 4 years at the level of huge municipalities, this is the assessment of the impact of this. So this is filters for unjustified legislation which could hinder the development of legal implementation processes. So these are 3 areas which we in ministry see as the proper domain for improvements and which would allow us to address successfully all the problems I mentioned. Thank you very much. Besides the reduction of the number of legal acts, normative acts, I agree with you. Does the ministry have the understanding regarding the future ways to go, either to develop regions or develop projects themselves? These 2 aspects do not exclude each other. The development of regions and a common framework of the regulation of the investment projects is a horizontal legislation. It works in many regions and it should be developed. At the same time, we need to develop those aspects related to the regions as a territorial community or combination of all relations to develop model laws. So this is what is our ministry is going to deal with, to develop the documents of the strategic development of the regions, macro regions and municipalities. These are 2 elements. What we need to avoid is just to ensure the interlinkage between these 2 aspects and avoid the contradiction or conflict between this. Dear colleagues, I would like to give the floor to the next speaker, Mr. Valentin, head of the Plekhanovsk University. Thank you very much. Our distinguished moderator has said that we have 2 conflicting viewpoints. One is that we have exhaustive or redundant regulation. The other is that this regulation is not sufficient. Both viewpoints could take place. Some regions could load hundreds of pieces of legislation, but they are not financially supported. That is why this regulation is not sufficient. Our legislation sometimes is far from falls short of the realities. And once we start to use the principle of the social and economic effectiveness, then I believe otherwise we won't succeed. We have a program of the Far East and the Arctic program. This is more than 50% of the territory of Russia, and it is proposed to apply the special legal regulation to these 2 entities. There is a question what would be applicable to the other part, remaining part of the territory. It's a way to nowhere, because these regions fell out of the regulation with regions with high added value, industrial added value. So this is the future of the country if we are talking about the reindustrialization. We see three processes taking place in relation between Russia, EU, Russia, United States, and United States and EU. Several years ago, there were some voices saying that we didn't have federalism anymore in the country. Once we launched economic reforms, it was clear that you need to delegate some economic powers to the regions. So there is a question. All principled decisions were made by the Ministry of Economy. It works out not the regional policy of Russia, but the strategy of the spacious development of or territorial development of Russia. It's brand new approach which is different to the strategy 2020 and could produce good results. So good system of federalism is based on the economic self-sufficiency. So regions should live on their resources or because of the revenues of the foreign trade. We have 49 stagnating regions of the Russian Federation, and the question is whether Russia is a federal state and to what extent it is justified to move towards decentralization. I believe it's centralized because the crazy war of sovereignties in 90s has been now over, and now it led to different results when Ministry of Finance trying to streamline the revenues of the region. It's the way to nowhere. If you took the revenues from the region and give it to enterprises or non-profitable enterprises, it's not good for both, because one believes why we should work if you will be deprived of the revenues, and the second why we should work if we will get it at any time. So all these issues could be grouped according to the debt of the regions. It could be 5, 7 groups, but not 83 articles on the far east of Russia. In order to launch these factors of growth and to use these factors for the interest of the development or industrialization, we need to develop specific regional strategies, which means a different system to the ownership system. We need to reform labor relations, because we see the overexploitation of the labor force, the enterprises, and so on and so forth. Of course, no profit in his own land. Let's take a look at the EU. When they introduced on political reasons the big states, European Union started to collapse. So crisis came when the European Union was joined by not self-sufficient Romania, Poland, and others. European Union should have been looked differently. And that was the vision of de Gaulle, General de Gaulle. Today, United States propose to create the European Union with the European countries. What do we see? The powerful state with a powerful economy, several times more powerful than those countries with which it wants to unite. So result is quite clear. Powerful economy would gobble the less powerful economies. Coming back to Russia, if we start forming state programs with respect to the specific group of regions, they would just gobble the interest of other regions of Russia. It's a very difficult task. There's no enough time to analyze this. But one of the economists invited to the legal forums used to complete, ladies and gentlemen, legal aspects. Let's make friends. We see the legal disorder collapse, our experts are interfering with your prerogatives, and vice versa. We see the introduction of Federal Law 31 when we see the introduction of the decree that municipals are entitled to impose taxes possessed by the small business, and we understand what would be the result of this process. I always made the same example in 90s. In one of the Siberian towns we had sauna. It was privatized and converted into the porno club or movie theater. So the same we can expect as a result of this federal law which doesn't require additional expenditures contained in our legislation, and it falls far from the realities because you don't take into account the losses of the regions and regions of the Russian Federation. I'm not trying to stand by the principle of federalism or centralism. I would suggest that we give the regions more powers.
But let's take into consideration the interests of the regions. Without the regions, Russia is not going to be saved. Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, you say that economists, when they are invited to the legal forum, it's the way to just move two pillars together. It's not the first time I'm invited, but there is no movement towards each other. But ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Zheng Cheng. He's our guest from the Ministry of Justice of the People's Republic of China. And we would like to hear what kind of experience China has in the support of investment zones, innovative zone, and this project led to great results. So now you have the floor. Thank you so much. Thank you, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm really happy to participate in this forum here today. I am going to tell you about the development of regional economy and investment environment. The legal system is a highly important factor of regional economy. And today we have lots of disbalance in the world and improvement of the legal system could help stabilization of the market systems in regional economies. And in the course of 30 years, at the time of having the reforms, the Chinese economy shows the growth. We had two stages, balanced and non-balanced development. And now this is the time of lower economic activity. Now in the People's Republic of China, we have 34 administrative regions, 7 more specialized economic zones were established, also the trade-free zones. And there is disbalance in the development of the border territories, also north and south, and also urban and rural areas. And now the program was announced about reviving the economy of the Northeast. The development of regional economies and investment environment depends on the plans of the development of the region, creation of the administrative systems, And in the People's Republic of China, regional advantages and disadvantages are taken into consideration. For example, east of China needs modernization. In the central and western regions, we have to take into consideration the problems with the procurement. And in the northeast, it's important to revive the production. And also, it's important to look for very specific solutions. We have to outline the draft laws regarding cross-provincial regions. And also, we could change the situation regarding the rate of development of the regions. From the point of view of construction, we have to establish the committees of regional development on the basis of the advantages of different regions and administrative structures, development for the external investments have to get without any obstacles, and we have to provide assistance in the development of difficult regions. It's necessary to create special field of law that's going to coordinate the development and also would create special incentives for the development of regional economies. And also they have taken into consideration the tax policy. Eastern areas should be modernized. It's necessary to speed up systemic manufacturing and the reforms in northeastern regions. We need greater level of transparency. From the point of view of outlining legal provisions, we must be more efficient in outlining the strategy, getting the better level of flexibility on coordination, and getting rid of administrative bans. Thank you so much for your attention. Tell me, please, I have this question right away. Well, your country, when there was economic growth, you supported projects or territories, separate projects or separate territories? Well, this question is the question that we ask ourselves, and we study this issue. We have general strategy of economic development, but depending on specific conditions and specific regions, we can also construct specific sites. Now we'd like to give the floor to Anna Izotova. Is she here? You have the floor. Thank you so much. My presentation, if possible, put it on the screen. Yes, thank you. Okay, so we'll see what's going on. Well, actually, I would like to dwell on strategic planning as a tool of investment development regarding also issues of tariff regulations. And first of all, I would like to emphasize that the main goal of the activities of the Federal Tariff Service is following the balance of interests of the consumers and the suppliers of energy, so that we could develop infrastructure in a better way. And the main tasks for us are the improvements of the efficiency of the work of infrastructure organizations, protection of the interests of the consumers, better supervision, and improvement of the system of government regulations. And here when we're talking about improvement of government regulations, it happens all the time. Before it was just two-dimensional. Now we can talk about three-dimensional work. We can see that it's not just the interests of the supplier and the consumer, but also we have to take into consideration investors' interests. We have the same type of tariff regulations. We are looking at the reliability, quality, safety and security, and the interests of the consumers are respected because now the consumer has the right to discuss certain tariff issues. Uniform information resources are being created. And regarding the investment and development, yes, highly important issue is the issue of long-term regulations. And three important points is territorial planning, infrastructure planning, and investment planning. All those types of planning must be connected with each other, and territorial planning and the planning of investment activities are not the tasks of the regulatory body, but it influences the tariff regulations, it influences the price for the consumer. And of course, all that must be done, taking into consideration social economic consequences also for the consumer. And we can say that now we have certain provisions regarding this process. And first of all, in electric energy field, new changes were introduced regarding investment projects where several important issues were reflected. And the implementation will start on the 1st of January 2016. But right here in particular, we have the consumer protection measures. The investment projects of infrastructure organizations must be discussed by the public, and the consumer councils must participate. Also, we have certain limitations regarding the cost of the event, of the program that would happen on the basis of the rates that are going to be verified and approved by the Ministry of Energy. And everything is going to happen not in the framework of the ministry, but actually the cabinet is going to review electric energy development issues. Also, the approvals used to take a very long period of time because it was necessary to go through so many federal authorities. Now only two federal authorities have to provide necessary approvals. And I wanted to tell you about Europe because we do look into European practice. We try to utilize the best practices. I wanted to mention that in Europe they have plans of territorial development, 10-year plans of territory development. And those 10-year plans are the foundation for the national development. All these plans are interconnected. They are all discussed, and only after that some tariff decisions are made. That's what's absent here. And right here, I would like to note that we outlined the draft law, which is called we are going to create a large information portal where we're going to provide information. the information is going to be open for the consumer. Some is going to be closed, some is going to be open. But we're going to publish the government decree, and we are going to take into consideration highly important issues for the consumer. And the producer who files an application on tariff regulations will have to publish it on the website. So what is to be done with this application? Who can provide comments, who cannot provide comments? And we suggest that we have some kind of legal rule so that we could discuss the natural monopolies and conduct that hearing just in the agency and do it with the consumers who disagree and look into their opinion. And also we have to take into consideration very important comments. Right here, would like to note that in connection with all the regulations that are evolving, regulators' role is highly important. And right here, we heard about politicized tariff decisions. There is an organization in Europe that collects all the regulators regarding government regulations. Unfortunately, Russia is not a member of the organization, but the Federal Tariff Service is working very dynamically with it. Yes, and there are some recommendations because this body should be organized so that we have objectivity, impartiality, and agreed upon nature of all those decisions. And so those were the OECD recommendations of 2012, and OECD mentioned that those recommendations should be regarding pricing, improvement of market situation, and reasonable level of profitability for suppliers of services. OECD recommends division of the system of regulations, and the powers of the ministry and the powers of the cabinet must be only there regarding economic goals. And there must be a key expert for the cabinet in the ministry for government regulations. And also the subjects of natural monopoly should be controlled, taking into consideration the balance of interests. And just in brief, I would like to note that in principle, the principles of functioning of regulators existing in Europe are also respected in Russia. Yes, we have our decisions could be challenged in court and could be set aside by courts. And we have this function of the normative acts and financial autonomy. That's where well, we don't have enough resources, human resources, to keep professional employees. It's highly important because the quality of tariff solutions depends on professionals. The principle of the independence of the industry. We are not subordinate to the ministry or anybody. We are reporting to the cabinet. We don't have any problems with that. And also neutrality principle, because we cannot combine any functions. And I would like to say that the principles, they determine trust for the regulator. Thank you. Anna, I have a question. FST, Independent Tariff Service of the Russian Federation, in case of competition of interests, of federalization and zoning, if it happens, what is the regulator going to do? Who is getting the priority? Well, our regulation is conducted at two levels, federal and regional. At the regional level, we establish only maximum tariffs, and we don't really influence the policy of the region because they have their own regulators that regulate the rules of the game. Taking into consideration your regional colleagues, you have the competition of interest. No, we don't get any competition because we have one single set of rules and the decisions could not be taken. Neither the rules of the market nor other rules. Everything is acting at the level of federal legislation. The only thing that they do, they make calculations in accordance with our rules. So you agree that federalization is stronger in this field. I believe this is the right approach because it's very difficult to create any other rules regarding tariff regulations. Next speaker, I would like to give the floor to Leonid Akimov, Director of the Legal Department of Rosseti. Good afternoon, colleagues. This is forum number 5, and the motto of this forum is changes. And when we're hearing about changes, well, this is what's in presentations, and without real decisive changes, we're not going to get to the creation of economic and legal conditions to change the status quo. 2 years ago, they started organizational changes in electric energy industry. And when we looked into the extreme medicine research, they told us about highly important coordination of the health of a person and how a person treats changes. The better the person is, the more flexible regarding changes, the better the health is. And thinking about the problems, we can say, unfortunately, we are sick. And this is the time for revolutionary changes. We understand some parties don't want to do it, some parties cannot do it. Now we have a distortion of economic and legal foundations in the relations of the federal level and local level, development of regions and municipalities, development of industries. And what's highly important that the approaches that are being implemented now in the land legislation, energy, gas supply cannot change the situation. I'm going to give you one tiny example, which is very vivid. In particular, this is the draft law on introducing changes into some of the legal acts regarding the level of exploitation and safety of gas networks. This draft, unfortunately, was not accepted well in the presidential administration. Why do the cabinet and the presidential administration understand the situation differently? So idea is to deal with the gas distribution system and the sites that don't have any owners. The draft law provides for the legal basis for just getting the property rights for certain plots of land when local self-government agencies reject to enjoy their rights or for some other reason don't use such rights. In the presidential administration, they came to the solution that the way which is suggested for solving this problem is not connected with economic content of the activities of natural monopolies and the rights that emerge. In particular, there are certain doubts that when the sites are going to be transferred, the monopolies are going to have additional expenses, and it's not clear how the regulation is going to be conducted. I would like to stop at one highly important quote which characterizes everything. It says that from political legal point of view, you cannot justify the situation when the right of property is received in the framework of civil law procedures. Here we're talking about natural monopolies in gas distribution and energy and electric energy. And it's written that here we're talking about public law grounds, and that's also concerns privatization, fiscal policy, and other property relations. And now I believe everything is clear why I gave that small example, but actually it encompasses all the sides of the municipalities, of natural monopolies, Russian Federation, the municipalities, and actually all this is a special way of getting the right of property. And with such a situation, when there is the broader way of application of this way, this is not acceptable. The result is going to be one more step in destruction of the participation of public legal amalgamations. And when we're talking about the turnover, so participants of the economic turnover, those are organizations and gas groups, and also they could lose their position in the field of property relations. Colleagues, we must change our attitude towards the subject of natural monopoly, because the function is distribution of socially significant goods, and when are we going to treat it as the place for specific solutions? In this case, we have this function and nothing good comes out of it, because the gap in this understanding by key institutions of the status of the organizations that are the foundation of the good of the people. So it doesn't matter how we try to change the legislation step by step. We must have very comprehensive approach. We must understand economic situation, and we have to get back to the basics. Thank you for your attention. Is it okay to ask questions? Do I understand you correctly? that you wanted to have broader legal grounds for the right of property. You wanted private companies to have it. The government wanted. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the cabinet. But where are the legal grounds? What was the logic? Economic logic. The logic is as follows. Our life in our municipalities is such that municipalities take into consideration economic content. They cannot implement the function which is provided by the civil code. And that's why municipalities are full of sites that are not used, are not functioning. And when we're talking about getting access to the grid, getting access to the network, we have to think about certain sites. Now it's not so. And in all those fields, they have lots of accidents. That's because of municipality-owned products. The municipality is not capable of performing that function, playing that role. And that's why it was a technological attempt to get natural monopoly included. Well, this is the attempt which was doubted. But what should be done by the natural monopoly when we try to arrange the speed of hookup? Well, modern legislation in electric energy field and gas distribution is going to be used to create the best, the most favorable conditions of development. And the municipality cannot provide the plots of land so quickly. It takes 18 months or maybe 2 years. And also, I would like to make an initiative. Right here, we need some kind of a facilitator. And maybe such fields, we need another principle of creation of laws and bylaws. Maybe officially we should switch to package principles. Sure. We are not going to answer this question specifically. We know that our Chinese colleague, he answered that question very clearly. And when we prepared intergovernment agreement between Russia and China, and we discussed it with the Chinese colleagues regarding electric energy reform, we said that the Chinese have it all together in one package, and we have different ones for different type. But he said that we have very good Chinese proverb. When people are separate, they can see advantages in getting together. When people are together, they can see advantages in getting separate. But this dialectic which exists in Chinese mechanism, I'm not sure. We have different understanding. Yes, it's not by chance that I mentioned that draft law, and everything is possible it's possible to solve anything. And when we're talking about municipalities, when we're talking about natural monopolies, everything is possible. We know natural monopoly, shareholder, so open shareholding company. And when we take the function that we witness, we can see the tariffs. Yes, Anna provided very vivid examples. And if we have certain certain role which is played in the life of every citizen. Well, it's not private law, and that's why we have this creation of mechanism of attracting investment to the companies at our level. And if we had the investment, we don't have problems. Why should we regulate the legislation? Everything could be solved.
In this case, we have a legislative basis in order to attract private foreign investment into the business. That is why we try to address these issues at the legislative basis, taking into account the existing gap. And sometimes it's very hard to confess to ourselves that something is dragging on here. We know that there are some draft laws regarding the improvement of legal regulation on natural monopolies, and natural monopolies are no longer there in terms of natural gas and other natural resources. So we need to have this division of powers in order to avoid this problematic situation in the legal system, because it will take some time. Just a brief question, brief answer. We just made a genome decision on development of strategic plans on the level of municipalities, 22,000 of them, but we don't know what the strategic plan would mean at the level of the state. Neither any idea on municipality. So let's take specific example. Kaluga region, everything is good there. It's a electrify region, but each time we have a stormy weather, the electricity we have electricity blackouts. I understand your question, where you're going. I wouldn't like to dwell specifically on a specific region. We have some advanced regions like Kaluga region. That is why businesses go in there. They have quite a number of successful business stories there, but unfortunately we have other regions which require such decisions to be made. So that to try at least to give some legal basis for this region. And of course we need to review tariffs, because sometimes it's a big mistake for even the Ministry of Finance. So we have some additional pieces of legislation on investment, on additional financing, but mechanisms are not working. Before we solve the issues of status and of the federal or unitary state and the status of the regions. Thank you very much. It was very interesting for me as a representative of the natural monopoly to listen to this presentation. Madam Semyonova, Federal Road Agency, regional cooperation between state and partnership. Can I speak instead of her? I am her boss. I am deputy head of Rosavtodor, Mr. Branchatov. Just try to be brief to address the relevant issues, pressing issues. This topic is quite pressing as never before, and I try to cover it briefly from our point of view, from the point of view of our agency. So we restore the road fund, increase the quality of roads, motor roads, and we have a huge gap between Moscow region and other regions in terms of economics, financing, and many regions have bigger or longer roads, motor roads network as the central one. That is why the possibilities of our fund allowed us to cover 100% of financing of the maintenance of roads starting from the last year, which also immediately told on the quality and length of the roads. If you spend bigger funds for the quality and maintenance of the roads, but you as the users of the roads, you see this catastrophic disbalance between regions. I'm not saying about municipalities in terms of maintenance possibilities. It's not their blame, it's the disaster for them. That is why we need to look for legal, economic sources to replenish the budget, local budget. This problem is quite pressing, and we and the Russian Federation and advanced regions, we are all dealing with the problem of replenishment of road funds. We see the depletion for a number of reasons, which has started just recently. How to reverse the situation, to replenish this? One of the options is the cooperation between state and business. I took part in many sessions over these 3 days, and many indicate the need and efficiency of the mechanism, states to business cooperation. But unfortunately, maybe it's not properly regulated so far, and I would like to continue what was said before me. Do we need to have over-regulation, or maybe we should ease somehow this regulation? We discussed the issue on PPP and the law on PPP, which is expected to be adopted. Should it be a framework law, or it should be quite tough in terms of regulation? And we see that a whole number of regions which adopted their own regional laws on PPP, they are quite inventive in this regulation, and we see on the example of St. Petersburg how the projects are implemented here, and the most advanced projects are especially implemented in the territory of St. Petersburg. This is one of the issues. Now we see the emergence of new opportunities, taking into account the financial status of the Russian Federation. I mean, the toll roads for the heavy machinery and trucks. We have a concession agreements, and starting from the November 15th this year, the owners of heavy trucks should pay for the use of motor roads. That would, as we expect, brings us 40 billion rubles. And these funds, we are interested to consider the possibilities to invest these funds in order to implement the regional projects of PPP. So we have a lot of meetings with the regional authorities. There are some advanced regions with the political will and experience team and other tools and mechanism in place and expertise to implement these projects. We would like to increase by several folds the number of these projects, and we believe that this mechanism of PPP is very efficient and it promotes further development. Thank you.
Извините, раз экономистов допустили, на 40 миллиардов вы доберетесь.
So you will get 40 billion rubles, and the prices will increase by 40 billion. Using this high interest rate and high risk for business, so you increase funds, increase prices, the living standards of the population going down, investment climate is going down, economy is collapsing. So, did you calculate the price of this question? Because there is a definition getting revenues, and there is a notion as the loss of revenue. So the enterprise, for example, is closed, then you don't have enough revenues from this enterprise. If a law says that it doesn't require additional costs, so the loss of revenues would mean the increase in losses. Thank you for your question. It's not for the first time I answer this. It would be very difficult for me to argue with such famous economist as you. This issue was studied comprehensively in terms of impact on price hikes. It's at the minimum level, but the damage caused by heavy trucks for the roads is not commensurate with the prices. So the price would increase by probably 10%, but in the product it would be up to 1% only. While the damage to the roads on the part of these overloaded trucks sometimes reaches 2.5 trillion rubles. So roads are depleted or destroyed faster as it is envisaged by the maintenance regulations. So trucks inflict damage by 50 times higher as compared with a passenger car. So we calculated all these aspects. We have been dealing with this for 7 years, and this law would have a positive impact on GDP of the country and the business environment as well. We believe that it would have a positive impact. Of course, there are some negative aspects, especially for the cargo companies. They are looking quite negative because of additional costs that they should pay, but the overall positive economic effect is good. So the ton of 12 tons cars or vehicles is also important topic for the government. Together with the colleagues from Rosavtodor, we continue to argue. Of course, the impact will take place, and it would be negative. So increase by 10% of the cost for the transport companies, especially in the current context, economic context. So please raise the profit tax by 10% and you will see what would be. And so for the price, for specific products which are transported mainly by road transport, you will see the rise of prices by 4 to 7% in the final price tag. And I would like to note, coming back to the first part of our discussion, we said that the federal roads are funded by 100% of their in terms of maintenance. Why this time do we need to charge additionally business additional tax in order to concentrate this money in road fund and distribute them? The same is done by regional authorities. We still have to install toll roads, but we already somehow invested this by 73%. That is why we would like to reduce the price by 1st January 2019. So we need, as we discussed it in the government, we need to freeze those decisions till 2019, decisions which focus on increase of costs or expenditures for the business. So corporate lawyers are saying that in the current economic situation we should avoid additional burden, financial burden on the business. Thank you. Proposals on the payment for the trucks. I would like to draw attention to all decisions of the Ministry of Finance. I mean the status of the federal road network, which if we don't have a clear vision regarding the possible financing sources, and these trucks sometimes are overloaded, and the damage to the roads in the process of utilization by these trucks of the road is not commensurate, and those norms that exist. Maybe this is a question to your colleagues. They don't take into account those capabilities of the transports over 12 tons of capacity. Maybe you saw these terrible pictures when sometimes bridges or other means of communication are destroyed because of the use, because of the heavy transport uses these roads. So we have, regarding these terrible stories, we have a special regime which is licensing. You should get the license to use the overloaded transport or extra burden on this infrastructure, but we have excise on fuel, transport taxation. We have a lot of sources which are imposed on transport companies depending on what kind of transport this company uses, so that to finance or ensure the funds go to this road fund. Of course, we need to ask the question, is it possible for us to avoid so far, or just suspend it so for some years the introduction of the additional burden on the business in the current context? I like your answer. Now we are looking for measures, support measures, but not we're talking about the how to make the life of the business tougher and using taxation or other fiscal measures. That is why let's consider this issue from the point of view of the reduction of the taxation burden and investment of these funds into the new projects. I understand very well that for the transport companies, metallurgy sector and others sectors, these are painful sectors for the country, and they are the subjects of the additional taxation. Let's not go deep into this discussion. Let's listen to the voice of regions. We have Mr. Lapshin, representative of Krasnoyarsk region. We would like to listen to what they are going to say, because we heard the government, we heard the regulators. I don't know whether Krasnoyarsk region is bad or good region, but we would like to listen to your opinion. Are we going to develop zones or regions, or develop projects? Thank you very much. Thank you for high assessment, saying that Krasnoyarsk region is a good one, is a good region. And let's come back to the main topic of our roundtable. Main theme of our roundtable. I would like to stick to that, but briefly I would like to say that I represent the Krasnoyarsk region, the subject of the Russian Federation. This is the first region in terms of timber resources, second in hydropower, then coal, ferrous, non-ferrous mineral resources. So this is one of the regions of Russia which, as we used to say, has a powerful investment potential. By the expert assessment, Krasnoyarsk region ranked 7th last year, following Moscow, St. Petersburg, Tatarstan and others. And we see the reduction of investment risks. We hold annually Krasnoyarsk Economic Forum. We have investment passports and investment strategy for our region. We launch dual two-language information portal, and we were the first in 2013 among the region who introduced all the standards of or regulations, so-called, for the requirement proposed by the Agency for the Strategic Initiative. So we were the first region to introduce them. So we have our own opinion with respect to the improvement of legal regulation. We believe that issue of non-tangible assets like banking loans and credits, attraction of investment should be considered further from a point of view of regulation. And interest with a high intellectual property. This is a nuclear energy and space technologies. So this issue requires further legal assessment or expertise and improvement. We would like to improve the supervisory and control measures for the sake of investors, in order to form the soft factors for investors to reduce times for implementation of the project. We need to study the experience of the issuance of bonds for the development of the territories. So we also see the need to develop the territories of advanced developments. This is a topic which is harshly debated. We adopted more than 25,000 normative acts, which sometimes part of them have the direct impact on the business opportunities. So these are regulation, roadmaps, action plans, strategies of development, and so on and so forth. I would refrain from using such a legal definition as vachanly, a legal vachanly. We have a Brown's movement. So this lawmaking is done by good persons with good intentions, and we see that sometimes investment attractiveness is improving, but the result is not adequate to the energy, resources and time spent for that. And we using our efforts to try to invent new pieces of legislation. So far we have 5 or 6 zones of the advanced development. Before we had 3 economic zones, investment zones, and so on and so forth. And we try to participate in all these projects, sometimes with a success. But now I believe it's right time when people should understand that they are going in the same direction, but results or the outcome are not adequate with the efforts. Maybe we need to change tactics. Just on the wake of my business career, I received the appeal of a businessman who wanted to implement investment project in amount of 6 million rubles. So he asked me about to speed up some investment projects, and I suggested to guide him through these procedures. After 6 months, investor introduced and commissioned this project, and so the result was quite surprising. So this method of work, I'm not telling about the fact that we need to duplicate this. We need to use this resource to the maximum extent. We need to reduce these administrative barriers and using our administrative resources. And I saw that many people in the chain of these administrative barriers, technological chain, they upon 10, 20 projects implemented, they automatically started implementing their functions faster. What I wanted to say, each time we implement the state investment project, we in so manner invest them in a project management format. We have project objectives, people, staff, resources, everything is clear, and we do it. When corporation or any economic entity is implementing its own investment project, they use the technology of project management as well. And today we'll start a big public-private project from Nickel, quite unique project in the polar regions, harsh requirements in terms of logistics, climatic requirements, technologies to be applied. And for 60 days we cut 200,000 people living there from the mainland. And we are working in cooperation with Norilsk, and many executives involved in this project, private capital. So we prepare this project and administer this as a project which uses the project management system.
I am profoundly convinced that before we launch the territory of government accompanying infrastructure projects, no matter whether it's government project, public-private or private, we're not going to achieve great results. Well, you can argue with me, but I am profoundly convinced. Because for several years I dealt with the investors and we had different investment projects. So they must have project officers. They must know what project management is all about. But we're moving in the opposite direction. In most of the Russian Federation regions, we don't have functions. We have just the manual management, but we must get to investment attractiveness, investment activities. We must go in the opposite direction. We must administer projects just using the mechanisms that have been invented a long time ago and are used quite successfully. so bad that you didn't say about tax burden that should be lower on business? Maybe from Novosibirsk region, maybe you're going to tell us about lower taxes in their region. Good afternoon, distinguished participants of the round table. I listened with great attention to previous speakers, and I am really grateful to organizers of the forum that they decided to discuss investment climate. Why is it so attractive? I believe this is the topic that could consolidate regional and federal effort. It's not the regional matter. It's not the federal matter. I would like to tell you a little bit about Novosibirsk region. Now people argue what's better, to develop the territory or develop projects. We tried to combine both. So we tried to provide for investment attractiveness of the region. And in order to get the general foundation, we can get two key directions of activities that are the basis of all the programs. We're talking about agglomerates and reindustrialization. These are independent and also mutually mutually connecting projects, and it's important to make the territorial aspect transparent. And also, what are we going to discuss when we talk about agglomeration? This is the government policy which was accepted in Novosibirsk region, which is uniting municipalities together with a region. And we're getting municipalities of different status. Could be districts, could be settlements, could be urban districts, and they are getting together to make economic decisions, but they keep political independence. It's a very complicated process. Today, we try to regulate everything at the level of agreements, and we made certain progress. We needed at least 1 year to get a legal foundation for this project. Now we have basic understanding, basic agreements, but secondly, information cooperation. What kind of issues are going to be dealt with as a group and how decisions are going to be made. And of course, the key issues are going to be development, land development, and land distribution and redistribution of public funding. All the funding that we get as transfer, redistribution, local investment and municipal investments, what is going to be a priority? And the goal is to create infrastructure that would make this territory attractive for business to enter. So this is something that we try to implement in the region. And secondly, it's reindustrialization. We have this strategy and we try to get just legal so we try to create a legal framework of this program, which provides for restoration of production, manufacturing and modernization on the basis of the sixth technological foundation. And we have very scientific district inside our region, Akadem Gorodok. We hope they're going to provide breakthrough technologies. Breakthrough technologies are there and they're ready to provide them. So it's reindustrialization. till 2025, 2 stages, 6 comprehensive programs, and 6 field programs. We determined the prospective zones, points of growth, and we're planning to get private investors involved, and we're planning to invest funds from the budget. And those zones of growth are quite evident, and they are determined by actual situation in Novosibirsk region. Novosibirsk region is the zone of industrial production and also agriculture. 2/3 have always been defense industry. Lots of components for defense industry. Well, agriculture, it's risky agriculture. That's why we should have poultry and livestock. And that's why those are key directions of activities. We have great scientific potential that we try to use in strategic support of the project and also in specific research. How successful? Well, we'll see. We'll live and see. But as a lawyer today, I envision lots of problems and lots of hindering because of problems with economic, legal, and financial legal documents. As of today, as I can see, legal regulation could be an obstacle, and it could be a driver. And today, I don't know whether legal support of these projects. I am a lawyer, but still I don't think that our legal support helps the development today. Today, a key problem that we have to deal with at the federal level, so this is the determination of the legal form of economic documents. Finally, we have the law on strategic planning. It's a major breakthrough, but it didn't help us to solve all the problems. Regarding program documents, actually it created lots of confusion, and today we don't understand the legal status and the documents that could provide for economic processes. We call it strategic programs, government programs, but are those individual legal acts? Are those legal norms? Are we going to have 152 bylaws to support this legal act? 14,000 legal acts at different level, up to 14,000 drafts. That's a huge number. So this document of strategic planning, is it individual? Is it a legal norm? Is it something different? I believe that we must create other types of documents and establish our relations with the financial planning documents, because the budget code is regulating the legal status of government programs, and it says that government program is the foundation for outlining the budget. And another side says that we must adjust government programs. It's not a paradox. It's not going around and around. This is the trip nowhere. And actually, in our economic team, they say what is to be included in the government program, and they say that they must itemize everything. Yes, it's very easy to monitor, it's very easy to get the reporting, but at the same time they say we're going to write it down. And how are we going to do it? This is hindering for outlining the document. it doesn't give the opportunity for project management, because we have to work for a long time, and then we are not going to have the need any longer. And the finance people say, we don't care what you write in the program, we have the budget, and what we write down, we're going to get it. Financial people cut it, and again, they didn't care about priority programs. And we got the fact, and the plan was just changed the way it fit the fact. In order to have successful investment projects, territorial or program, we have to understand the ratio of economics, finances, and law. They must work together. And lawyers, finances, economists, it doesn't matter whether you're going to have poultry or cows. Nobody cares, because every agency is looking at its own problems. And the biggest paradox is, if we look at all the government programs, they are not formed territorially or like a project. So they are actually distributed in accordance with the distribution of budgetary funds. And what kind of the results we have? My program success depends on the cash that I can pump from one program into my program. I believe that the government program cannot be viewed by one region. In other legal acts, we're going to determine what is to be done, but the document must be the document consolidating everybody's effort. And also, I would like to get business involved. Show me one major player in the business who calculated the government program. They don't care. Of course, what is there for business? Are you going to provide any privileges? I believe that the problems are with the content of the program. The program says the region is going to get the bonuses, but you don't see any bonuses for business if it enters the program. As a lawyer, I am not going to allow the government program to contain some bonuses for business. That's why it must be taken away from business. And the government programs should be changing. The status should be changing. We must find some legal format, economic content, and financial means. Thank you. We are moving towards one more region, Yamal-Nenets Autonomous District. Dmitry Pogorelov. Are you going to tell us about incentives for investment in your district from the point of view of business and not just government? Thank you. Thank you, distinguished colleagues. I'm going to tell you about the experience of Yamal-Nenets Autonomous District. I'm going to tell you that Yamal-Nenets Autonomous District is in the Arctic zone of the Western Siberian Valley, 760 square kilometers, and the potential is great. For many years, we analyzed all fields of economy, and we have certain plan of action of economic development of the area. If you look at the infrastructure from the point of view of economic prospects, you can define 4 zones: oil extraction, gas extraction, also industrial Urals, and transportation zone. Development of other zones are difficult without logistics. And the economy of the region is raw materials, mostly it's oil and gas. And Yamal-Nenets district has leading positions in the Russian Federation regarding export of gas. And the main manufacturers, those are Gazprom and Novatek. And all the projects are connected. You have to, one of the main economic missions of the region is organization of major investment projects. So we're talking about Yamal Peninsula, Yamal LNG enterprise, also deep sea Arctic port, and also it's going to be major international multifunctional trade seaport, and also oil extraction in the northeast. All the projects that I mentioned, those projects were outlined some time ago. Some of those projects were outlined in the 1970s. Some of them existed in Russia after the revolution. Now these projects are being implemented. However, if you exclude oil and gas, we could also implement 3 projects: local, for internal demand. Second is implementation of construction materials, and number 3, so these are Yamal brands. So that's deer meat and also fish. 11 years ago we got to the international market, and we have the contracts with Finland and Germany. And of course, all these projects, they couldn't be implemented without support of the state, and there was significant investment on part of the government, and also the assistance in implementation of these projects. And of course, when we're looking at the autonomous district, we're talking about great potential. Now great effort is made to develop transportation infrastructure. That's creation of road system, aviation, and there is a company that has been existing since 1996, and they help with water transportation. And now several words about incentives for investment in our area. In order to promote important projects for investors, we have tax privileges, and you mentioned that earlier. And last year the volume of investment in the area was about 124 billion rubles, and the general volume of investment will be by 2 trillion rubles by 2020. For small and medium businesses, we have the complex of financial support measures. Today, grants are the most popular. Grants to start their own business. Also support of leasing mechanisms. Then the credits, and also development of private kindergartens. Our highly important priority is getting private investment into the creation and construction of social infrastructure. Mostly these projects are implemented in public-private partnership. As Dmitry put it, when we create mechanism of public-private partnership, the regions of the Russian Federation have to be very inventive in regulating those issues. So public-private partnership provides for outlining of the norms to be regulated. Our suggestion is to get to establish the rules understandable for everyone, establish them at the federal level so that all the regions are going to follow those rules. I'm not going to talk about the statistics, the results. I would like to say that the standard for favorable investment climate was implemented, all the 15 requirements. In particular, implementation of the standard requires manual regulating because major investors must be brought by hand and helped. In conclusion, I would like to say a couple of words about what's primary and what's secondary. That I would like to say that in every specific case, it's necessary to deal with these issues. Thank you. Have a good weekend and have great investment potential. We don't have much time. That's now we're going to give the floor to other speakers in order to, well, I'm writing down everything and later I will be able to sum it up. Director of Legal Department of Norilsk. Colleagues, I am not going to have my presentation because we don't have that much time left. I'm going to talk about three main mechanisms of attracting, also supporting and keeping investment, which is topical for our company. That's public-private partnership, regional investment project, and the territory of advanced social economic development. Regarding public-private partnership, the company is a participant in public-private partnership together with Russian roads, and they have the question was asked whether public-private partnership needs framework regulating, or maybe it needs specific details. I can tell you that the sooner federal law on public-private partnership is going to be accepted, and the more specific is it going to provide the rules for the behavior of participants, the better. Because in this situation now, any questions that emerge, they are connected with a long process of making management decisions, and detailed rules are necessary for business and for the government to be most effective and efficient in implementation of that institution. Now I am going to dwell on such mechanisms as regional investment projects. This is the question that we had many times in the course of the discussion: what is to be supported, specific investment projects or the territory? And I have to remind you that we have just tax breaks, but when there is more support, so we're talking about customs, about land use, and one of the key issues is that the privileges of original investment projects are used only when you launch the project as such. But we need special stimulating measures at the level of capital investment, and specific investment project must get the privileges. I'm not going to dwell on the fact that for original investment projects and also for participation in other projects, it's necessary to overcome large number of technical and administrative obstacles. I'm going back to the issue, what specific could be made in order to move forward and stimulate the participants of regional investment projects. Right now, taking into consideration the difference between regional investment projects and the territories of advanced development, the most topical is moving closer of these two legal regimes. And in particular, providing original investment projects, providing the privileges at the initial stage of the project, and also provide, for example, VAT compensation. It's also highly important to get works and services in the notion of regional investment projects, which is going to help the investment of such infrastructure programs as transportation, processing, logistics.
There's a number of hardly explainable barriers which we believe have to be removed. Barrier to sale of shares by a single seller, and while to increase the investment attractiveness for the huge infrastructure projects. Then justifiable access for a legal person to implement only one or single investment project. It would make sense to retain the status of participants in investment projects while reorganizing the society or the public, and make equal the taxation regime for the participants in the territories of the advanced development and other special regions. This regime should no less favorable as for other territories. In the medium term, it would be practically possible to use universal mechanism to attract investment, maybe to, in some time in future, to get away from the expansion of these regimes for all territories in the Russian Federation. State doesn't have any risk because the creation of territories of advanced development is made on the basis of the governmental decisions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Alexander Ivanovich. I would like to give the floor to one of the representatives of the legal companies, Emelyantsev, Japan law firm.
Could you show the slide? So I'm trying to speak in Russian, и я буду высказать на русском языке. Но, конечно, я вот
According to my experience in this forum, it's very hard to speak being the last. I would like to dwell in my presentation on a very important on this slide. I would like to tell you about our experience in special economic zones. We have 850 free trade zones, economic zones, which is used as one of instrument of social economic development. As you know, in Korea, in South Korea, we developing for a very brief period of time, and we became a leader in the world economy. But in terms of creation of the free economic zones, only in 2009 we started to develop this concept. Then in December 2002 we adopted a law of the Republic of Korea on free economic zone. It entered into force in June 2003, and it's still in force with some amendments. Incha Free Economic Zone, which is located 30 kilometers from Seoul, and then in August 2003, in October 2003, we created two more free economic zones in Busan. We set up the agency for the trade economic zones, and we have 8 free economic zones in Republic of Korea. So I skip these slides because of the time. I would like to dwell on this slide and to say a couple of words on that. We understand perfectly well, and we talk about the support, incentives, benefits, and guarantees for creation of the favorable economic climate and to attract investment. These issues are very important, but recently, according to our experience, the issue on supporting and creation of favorable conditions for residents of foreign investors are also very important. Yeah, I work in the private sector, and I often accompany my clients, and you as a director should decide on visiting some of the countries, in particular free economic zones, in order to check the availability of benefits and guarantees. And if are the same, then if one of these zones has better accommodation and health care conditions, cheap housing, then it would be additional. As compared with other zones, so I give just extremes examples, but many successful economic zones in Singapore and Chang have the most beneficial conditions for staying for the foreign investors. So agency pays a lot of attention to improve the living standards and removal of barriers. So this is the structure of the agency. You know it very well. I skip it. Here I would like to say a couple of words about the following. In contrast to other free economic zone in Singapore and Pudong, we have some limitation or restrictions with respect to the local companies, huge local companies. As we know, in Singapore and Pudum, they do not differentiate between foreign or domestic investors. So both have equal conditions and guarantees, be it to foreign or domestic companies. Therefore, recently we have removed all barriers and limitations for the huge Korean companies in order to increase investment potential of the Republic of Korea. And it became evident that it is very important to look for the domestic huge companies, which is the main factor for the decision making for investment, because foreign investment would like to find a possibility to cooperate with huge Korean companies or investors in the project, and Korean companies could enter these processes and projects and to gain the same privileges and guarantees. Yeah, just we don't have time. Maybe I skip it. Just to say on this slide, in our experience, for the success, we need to ensure qualification or professionalism of the agency of the free economic zone in terms of qualification of the personnel and so on. And we set up a body, state governmental body, in contrast to our agencies. Singapore agency has a lot of foreign experts working for the Singapore agency, and sometimes they are on a high position and have experience of working in the private companies in various sectors, and they are quite active in removing barriers for the foreign investors, using their experience and their acquaintances with foreign investors. Just briefly, my presentation is voluminous, but because of time, I briefly presented our experience of work. Maybe it's not a 100% ideal system. Each country has its own peculiarities and specifics. So our experience, we hope, would help you in your work. All the success in your project work. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Sorry for other speakers. We don't have time left. I would like to apologize. Now it's time to sum up the work of our round table. All of what we heard is of great value for us. We try to use it in our further practice and further work, and we will submit to Ministry of Economic Development all the proposals that we heard today, starting from the launching of the project and other topics related to converting Russia into attractive territory for investors and for the business, and also for end users. So everything would be taken into account. Thank you very much. I thank all the participants of this discussion. Thank you for coming. It's quite clear that this topic is vital for everyone, because depending on the development of the system, that would ensure a better climate for a better living standards for our citizens. Thank you very much, and I do hope that our round table would continue its work in other formats, including the economic forum. Thank you.